We're going to start tonight with some breaking news on a story that we first brought you this time last week when it was just emerging. This may have been the only place you've heard about it in the national news, but as luck would have it, we brought you this story for the first time a week ago at this time. It's a story out of New Mexico, and just tonight as we are getting on the air, there is a major development in that story tonight, and it is a shocking one. I imagine, given these new developments in the story, this will not be the only place you will be hearing about this over the next several days. All right, what we were able to tell you last week was news of a spate of recent shootings in New Mexico that had targeted the homes and offices of at least a half dozen elected officials in New Mexico, all of them members of the Democratic Party. Now, no one was injured in these shootings. These shootings hit buildings, not people. But they apparently had all been targeted at Democratic politicians during December and January. So just over the last few weeks. And we first learned of the shootings at 5 homes and offices belonging to some county commissioners and 2 state senators and New Mexico's newly elected Democratic Attorney General. Then we learned that there had also been an additional shooting at the house of the incoming Speaker of the New Mexico State Legislature. We've since learned some additional details about these shootings targeting individual Democratic politicians. And it's alarming. It's not an individual potshot here and there. For example, on December 4th, it was 8 shots that were fired into the home of one Democratic county commissioner in New Mexico. That was December 4th. Then on December 11th, it was 12 bullets that were fired into the home of a county commissioner. Again, this is all in New Mexico. They're all Democrats. So again, December 4th, at one politician's home, he's a county commissioner, 8 shots fired into his home. A week later, December 11th, 12 bullets fired into the home of another Democratic county commissioner. Then on January 3rd, it was a state representative, a Democratic state representative named Linda Lopez in New Mexico. On January 3rd, shots rang out at her house. 3 bullets went through her daughter's bedroom as her 10-year-old daughter was inside that bedroom asleep. So that's 3 of them, December 4th, December 11th, January 3rd. But all in all, it ended up being 6 different Democratic officials who appear to have been targeted. Initially 2 county commissioners, then a state representative, then a state attorney general, and then a state senator. So 6 shootings altogether, again, all targeting Democratic Party officials in New Mexico. Tonight, Albuquerque police have announced that they have made an arrest in these shootings. And I said this is sort of shocking news. The reason it is shocking news is because the man they have arrested and charged is a Republican candidate for a state house seat in last year's elections. He was the Republican nominee for a state legislative election this past November, Albuquerque's House District 14. His name is Solomon Pena. He lost that election by more than 3,600 votes to the incumbent Democrat who holds that seat. Mr. Pena was an unusual candidate. There was a local write-up on his candidacy in the Santa Fe New Mexican in August that noted that Solomon Pena, despite being the Republican nominee for this state legislative seat, he was a convicted felon many times over. He'd been convicted, in fact, of 19 different felonies, including burglary, larceny, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and receiving stolen property. As a result of those multiple felony convictions, he spent almost 7 years in prison. But then the Republican Party picked him to be their nominee for this state legislature seat in Albuquerque. Again, he made it to the general election as the Republican nominee. He lost the election to the Democrat incumbent. But now police allege, announcing his arrest today, that he hired people to shoot at some of these Democratic officials' homes and offices. In a press conference just tonight, Albuquerque officials say that Solomon Pena pulled the trigger himself at least one of the shootings, but they also made clear that they have evidence connecting this candidate to 4 of the 6 shootings that they've been investigating, while the other 2 are still under investigation. Again, this is just a remarkable development in this story. The lead in the Albuquerque Journal tonight is this. The Albuquerque Police Department has arrested Solomon Pena, an unsuccessful Republican candidate for the House District 14 seat, in connection with the shootings at local Democratic politicians' homes. Chief Harold Medina said Pena, an unsuccessful legislative candidate in the 2022 election, is accused of conspiring with and paying 4 other men to shoot at the homes of 2 county commissioners and 2 state legislators. Again, that shows that they're connecting him to 4 of the 6 shootings that they've been investigating. They're saying that they are not connecting him and these men they believe he hired to the other 2 shootings. They have not yet connected him to those other 2, but those 2 other shootings remain under investigation. Here was Albuquerque's mayor speaking tonight after the arrest was announced.
This situation today, I think, obviously points out that these shootings were orchestrated. They were dangerous attacks, not only to these individuals, which is personally the most terrifying for them, but fundamentally also to democracy. That is why this is so terrible. This type of radicalism is a threat to our nation, and it has made its way to our doorstep right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I know here we are going to push back, and we will not allow this to cross the threshold. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, this was about a right-wing radical, an election denier who was arrested today, and someone who did the worst imaginable thing you can do when you have a political disagreement, which is turn that to violence.
Again, that's the Albuquerque mayor speaking tonight after the arrest of this Republican state legislative candidate was announced by Albuquerque police. Again, police say that they believe he pulled the trigger in at least one of these shootings targeting the homes and offices of Democratic elected officials, and they believe he conspired with and paid 4 other men to fire into the homes of county commissioners and state legislators. Now, you heard the mayor there reference this was about a right-wing radical, an election denier who was arrested today. What that references, I believe, are the frequent public statements, online social media statements by this Republican candidate maintaining that he didn't actually lose this election in which he was the Republican candidate this past November. Again, the Republican Party nominated him to be their candidate for the state legislative seat out of Albuquerque in November. He lost by a large margin, by more than 3,500 votes. Since then, he has maintained that he didn't really lose and the election was rigged against him. Local coverage of his candidacy has noted that he is in the words of the Santa Fe New Mexican, a, quote, gushing supporter of former President Donald Trump. He appears to have emulated Trump in rejecting the results of the election that he lost. But police in Albuquerque tonight say he went much further than that, accusing him tonight, formally charging him with having pulled the trigger himself and led a conspiracy with 4 other men to shoot into the homes of other Democratic officials. So again, this is just breaking tonight. We'll bring you more on this as we learn more. We do know the names of these half-dozen Democratic elected officials in New Mexico who we believe were targeted in this string of attacks. We've got calls out to some of those elected officials who were reportedly targeted in these attacks. As we collect statements from them, as we're able to get in contact with them over the course of this hour, we will revisit this story as we learn more. Wow. I knew that was a strange story out of Albuquerque when we first started covering it. I did not expect that it would develop in this way. It was actually a SWAT raid on this guy's apartment today in Albuquerque that resulted in the first public knowledge that he was the man who had been arrested. All right. As I said, we'll bring you more as we learn more.